you.
Join her live.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Bob Reinhardt. I'm the Director of Business Administration. The chairperson for the committee, Ms. Thomas, is caught in traffic. She asked me to start and the committee meeting as we go. I'm going to ask the people around the table to introduce themselves just so everyone knows who's in the room at the current time. Bob Reinhardt, Director of Business Administration.
Doug Taylor, Director of Operations.
Matt Dirksen, Director of IT.
Nancy Carroll, citizen. Cindy Lawn, President of CRESPA.
Ed Tate, School Director.
Mary McKee, School Director.
Zach Williard from Public Financial Management, Independent Financial Advisor.
Jerry Grubb, School Director.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This evening, we're going to have an abbreviated Finance Committee meeting. I've made the agenda short tonight so that Mr. Taylor can get to his interviews, which is going to be very time-consuming. First thing we have, Zach Williard is here to talk about the 2018 financing plan. That is going to consist of discussing the needed borrowings for the middle school projects. We're continuing this will be the final borrowing for the middle school projects, Wrightstown Elementary School project, and also the Rolling Hills Elementary project. And then we're going to talk briefly about the refinancing opportunities, and you'll hear where the market is today. Then I have a real short agenda item, update on our new website design contracts, and it's really more communications items. And I'm doing this for Susan O'Grady tonight. She did ask to come, but I told her with the timing and everything that I would handle it. And also, she will be in attendance at Thursday's board meeting, and she will be doing a presentation. So we'll get much more detail on this. But it's a somewhat time-sensitive contract that I'd like to have approved Thursday evening, so that's why we're doing that. As Zach speaks to the numbers, and you will see he'll be discussing them, I just wanted to make sure I go over this. I know you saw this, I guess, a couple of meetings ago. Middle school projects, I've reduced the amount of borrowing because we have some movement on our escrow accounts where Doug has been getting some escrow money back that are closed. If people don't remember the escrow thing, we can talk another time about that. So I moved that to 14.8 million. Wrightstown Elementary School, it's a maximum of 18.2 million. And Rolling Hills is a maximum of 19.5 million. So in total, over the next 2 years, you will see that Zach will be talking about borrowing 52.5 million. Understand as the middle school projects close and we get better numbers, that number could change in future years. But as you also are aware, we have other projects behind those projects that we could end up borrowing for them. And then Zach will be talking about the refinancing opportunities. And I'm just going to tell you right now, there's limited opportunities at this time because of market interest rates. So I'm going to ask for Zach to go on, and I will tell you that there's the presentation that Zach has is a very detailed presentation. It'll be available on our website tomorrow for you to see the details of it. Last time Zach presented, I tried to project a lot of that information up on the screen, and it's not worth me trying to do that. So there's going to be one slide that you're going to see that is general notes about the presentation, but the numbers that he's going over in the presentation is much more detailed. That will be available on the website if anyone out there wants to look at it. And I won't have that detailed information on the screen tonight. Zach?
Okay, great, thank you. So if you flip to page 1 of the handout, we'll kind of hit on a couple points here. So this is the 10-year MFD. It's the tax-exempt version of the 10-year Treasury. It's the benchmark that we like to follow in the municipal world. If you look at the top half of the chart, going back to 82, you can see where rates are now. They're still at all-time lows, okay? So that's really good news. If you look down at the bottom of page 1, you can see kind of the last 18 months or 2 years worth of interest rates. And you can see, it's been pretty volatile, but again, the lowest point ever was last July. You can see that on the chart. We're off the lowest point ever. But again, rates are still very, very low. You've been very fortunate through all these projects, locked in extremely low rates. We've refinanced millions of dollars worth of debt, saved lots of money. So I think, you're still in a good position to lock in this next borrowing. Now, on the refinancing part that, we usually talk about every year, I think we've refinanced debt every single year for the last 10 or so years. So the good news and the bad news of that is if you look at the top chart, okay, look where rates were in 2012. They were very low, okay? The bonds that we have the ability to refinance in 2018 were issued in 2012 and 2013, okay? So you have very, very low interest rates on them now. Bad news is we're probably not going to be able to refinance them because they were so low. So we did a great job back then, got really low rates. We're going to keep them kind of on the radar screen, but at the moment, it doesn't make sense to tee those up for refinancing because they're just not in the money.
We knew that.
We
right?
did,
We
yeah.
knew that this was coming.
Yeah, at some point, we were going to run out of
Exactly.
all these.
What is the
things.
minimum? Explain what we determine. minimum.
Typically, we like to save at least 2% of the bond issue that we're refunding, meaning that if we're refunding $10 million worth of debt, we want to save at least $200,000 net of costs and net of state reimbursement. Right now, you'd save zero if we would do these, so it just doesn't make sense. Now, we'll monitor that and we'll come back if it does make sense or if there's an opportunity. But right now, it's so far below that threshold that it doesn't even make sense to tee it up.
Let's be honest, use the term, unfortunately, we can't do that. On the other hand, fortunately, we don't have to.
Right.
Okay, because we're not at odds, we're not out of the market, our numbers are great compared to where they are now. So it's not unfortunate at all, it's just, truthfully, it's unfortunate for you, but we're net, we're the same.
No, it's a fine situation to be in on those levels. So, if you flip to the next page, just some bullet points. I'm not going to read through all these in detail. I think the main thing is every December we like to kind of lay out what the plan's going to be. As we just said, the refinancings at the moment are going to be out of the plan. Okay, so what we're talking about now is the projects that Bob had talked about earlier. We're talking about locking in the biggest chunk during a two-step plan this coming January. Okay, reason being, again, we know where rates are. They're still very low. So you can take a lot of the interest rate risk off the table by getting this done here in the next, 60 days or so, if that's what you want to do. The first borrowing for this new money plan would be about $43 million. And again, of the full 52 million. So again, it's most of it. That number may change here as we head into the final days before locking in interest rates, but that's what it's estimated to be at right now.
Could you just go back a little bit and talk about the market today? With
Sure.
everything that's going on with this tax reform and where markets are going all over the places?
So with tax reform looming, there is a number of provisions in there that would be bad for the municipal market and municipal issuers. One is the elimination of advance refundings, meaning the ability to refinance debt before the call date. Now, while that doesn't directly impact the school district, nationally it impacts a lot of issuers. Okay, so this week alone, they were expecting across the country about $23 billion worth of municipal bonds to be priced, which is very heavy volume, a lot of supply. Okay, so the oversupply, they were expecting interest rates to go higher again just because supply and demand, right? You also had the Fed yesterday, which increased the overnight rate 0.25%. Okay, now that shouldn't actually hurt us. That might actually help you because that would be money that you can earn on your investments. Because when we're talking about locking in these bond rates, we're talking about longer-term rates. That's the overnight rate. All right. So that happened. Hopefully, you'll be able to earn a little bit more on your cash. And in theory, that shouldn't impact the actual borrowing rates, that we would lock in next month.
So just so I'm understanding, so the change about the call that you wouldn't call, that in the commercial sector, they won't be able to call bonds early?
So we'll still be able to refinance them when we're at the call date.
We will. But how about?
Nationally, they will, but a lot of times, if it has a call date that's 5 years from now,
Right.
you can refinance it now, technically.
Right.
Okay, that provision would be stripped away from
You have to be
issuers.
taxable bonds to refinance.
Correct, they either have to issue taxes debt.
Okay, I was trying to figure out if that put us at odds with what other people could do so that it make ours attractive. Someone could lock in the rate and we lock the longer term, or we could call them and that would make us less preferable.
Right, and one of the reasons why the district is less affected is, over the last 15 years, we've really pushed for 5-year call features. So that means that every 5 years, you can refinance the debt. Nationally, most issuers have 10-year call features, which is twice as long as you. So you have had opportunities to refinance debt basically every year, okay? Whereas a lot of people don't because it's a 10-year call feature. So at the very bottom there, you see a sample timeline. So assuming that you want to move forward with this plan, at the January 18th meeting, we can pass what's called a framers resolution. That's, I think we've done the last 5 years worth of issuance that way. That means that we, pass the resolution that night. There will be a number that's advertised that's going to be more than 43 million. I'm not sure what that number will be yet. But if you remember, we always have to approve a resolution that's typically 15 to 20% higher, okay? So that when we go price the bonds in the market via the competitive internet sale, we can do all the special things we need to do to make sure that you're getting the best transaction, and the bond counsel and your solicitor have everything they need to get this approved at DCD. So we would be back, the financing team would be back on the 18th with this parameters resolution teed up. We would get that approved, and the earliest we could price bonds and lock in interest rates would be the following week, assuming that we get the credit rating back on time and everything like that. We're set to, assuming you want to move forward, to get information out to the credit rating agencies tomorrow or Monday at the latest, so we can get in line. Again, there's a lot of people right now rushing to market. There is a 3 to 4 week wait period currently. So again, if that's how we want to proceed, that would be the expedited timeline to lock in rates. So any questions on that? All right, page 3, this is your debt summary. Here we just highlighted the 2 series of bonds that we are monitoring for this year's refinancing opportunity. As we said, it doesn't make sense to do it right now. If you look at the very bottom column of those yellow lines there, you can see the 2 call dates for 2018. Okay, so we'll keep those in mind, and we'll touch base with Bob later this summer if it makes any economic sense. So page 4, I think, is the important page. All right, so this page you've seen a lot of different versions of over the past 6 years that we've gone through these capital plans. So going left to right, all right, in column 5, that would be your debt as of June 30 earlier this year. Okay, so that's kind of where we are today, right? In the purple column, we have the column there that we've always used refinancing savings. The district's always done a nice job of using those savings, okay, to take over the long term, over the life of your debt, to offset any possible new money impacts to your budget. Now, right now, we don't have that populated because we haven't refinanced anything. We're going to keep that there. So columns 2 and 8 in the orange there, that would be the first borrowing. That's the $43 million that we're talking about. In column 8, it's structured over just over a 20-year period, so that it has the least amount of impact to your budget where you have debt now. Okay, that's over in column 11. So you can see, we've gone through this plan now for a number of years. We borrowed over $100 million with no impact to the budget for a number of years now. Now we are getting to the point where there may be some budgetary impact to this financing. The blue column, that would be what we call the cleanup issue for this set of projects, estimated next year to be about $9.5 million. The reason we would do that is to keep that one bank qualified. If you remember, bank qualified gets you the better interest rates and the better call feature. All right. Now, if something happens and we need to borrow more than that, or we need to borrow less than that, we'll just change it at that time. So this is just estimated for now. So that would get you to column 10, which would be your new debt service annually that would appear in your budget. And then column 11 shows you how that either impacts or is below your budget based on where you are now at $17 million.
I'd like to spend a little time on that just for Mary Ann for sure. Just the other board member, I think you understand this, but Mary Ann, this is where the rubber hits the road. And if you look at column number 10, and you see in 2018, 18,082,000, do you see that?
Yes.
Our budget, in our budget, has 17,966,000. So in essence, we are going to spend more money in our budget Therefore, we're going to have to get that from somewhere. So that's generally how I determine the use of fund balance. So if we did this, I would say we'd be using $116,000 of fund balance. Now, in many years, there's other things that happen. My revenues come in a little better, my expenditures come in a little better, and that creates fund balance. So you may not even see our fund balance going down. But if you look at this transaction specifically, that would happen. So if you look at all the negative numbers that are adding up there, that is showing how much fund balance we would be using. But understand, we may not actually use it. But for this transaction, what it's showing us then is that our debt service drops off a lot then, so we don't pay as much debt service. So then we're starting to have more capacity to borrow after that. Okay. This does show us because, and I'm not sure you were involved when Doug came out with our buildings meeting about $120 million in addition to this. So this shows that we have capacity down there, but it also shows that, to me, and this will be part of the budget presentation this year, that we may have to increase our budget. And when I say we increase our budget, then we have to either increase taxes, use fund balance, or do something else. This year, we are looking at closing Richboro Middle School. So we believe there's going to be savings in closing that school because of personnel and things like that. So I would say if we're going to do something, we may want to do it this year because it won't impact our taxes because we can use some of those savings to be able to help us going down along the way. So that is something that the board's heard. We talk about now the strategy we look at in this year's budget. I just want to make sure that you understood that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I can sit down with you more, and you'll see my graphs everyone's used to seeing on this. That kind of, it's easier than just looking at numbers like this.
Thank you.
So,
Yep, no, that sounds good. So any other questions about this page? The next page is going to be the same page, except we have your long-term capital plan. You know, the numbers get bigger, all this is estimated, the timing is estimated.
The interest rates are in.
Yeah, the interest rates are obviously estimated because we're going out a number of years into the future here. So this page is a little smaller. This is one that Bob definitely couldn't fit on the PowerPoint slide, but if you flip to page 5, starting on the left, everything is kind of the same up into the blue column, right? So that's through 2019. So after that, we have a borrowing each year, okay, which was, you know, I think kind of the quick version of if you were to go through all these various projects. The projects are labeled there at the bottom of each, you know, kind of top box there. You can see which ones we're talking about. And, you know, you're somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25, maybe 30 million, depending on which project it is, over the next couple of years. So again, if you kind of shoot right to column 18, which is the punchline. So this assumes that you borrow this money, you do all these different projects. When all the dust settles, you'll be out in column 18. All right, now when you compare column 18 to column 20, which is what's in your debt service budget right now, column 19 shows you what the impact would be. So as your debt's currently structured, it's a little bit higher up front over the next 10 years. So you can see there's a bigger impact to your budget in those years. And then after that, once you get out to the 28 years, so basically 10 years from now, you can see your debt drops off significantly. So that at that point, these projects really have minimal, if any, impact to your budget based on current interest rates. So one thing I would point out is, you know, again, just for illustrative purposes, we assumed that you were going to do these consecutive borrowings over the next few years. In reality, if those projects slow down or you push them, you know, out each year, the upfront impact in column 19 would all be also pushed out, okay, and minimized. Because at some point you can do some of these projects as we get closer to the year 2028. And again, your debt will drop off at that point significantly. There may not be nearly as much upfront impact to your budget. So let's pause again and see if we have any questions here. Again, this page is very estimated. It's just to give you a long-term look at, you know, putting some dollars to these projects in budgetary
I think
fashion.
the board has seen this. I did this a couple months ago, if you remember, at a board meeting with the numbers you provided me before. Is that These numbers have changed a little bit as we moved some estimates around, but it's just, in essence, the same thing. And it just shows that this is the year that we can put money towards the debt service, we may be able to clean a lot of this up. And it makes sense that this would be the year, because we may have savings from closing the school, as opposed to having to issue, to increase tax, have a tax increase specific for a bond issue. So.
Yeah, if you know, again, if you're looking at this and something changes, the numbers go down, or you peel out one of the projects or add it, you know, obviously column 19 will adjust depending on what you add or subtract.
The other thing that, there's no point in trying to estimate, but this doesn't account for any increases in revenue with the natural growth in our tax base or otherwise, so.
Yeah. What I'm looking at here is we're just comparing this to the budget.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, as long as we're using the same amount of resources in the budget, it doesn't affect taxes, and if taxes go up and all that, that's good. But this line item will not affect the taxes.
Right, yeah, because you're using the same total for the annual debt service, the budget item at 17.9 million, 18 million.
Yeah.
So for 2020, you had an extra $500,000 in your debt service budget for whatever reason.
Right.
The red numbers would all adjust accordingly.
So I just think it's great. I mean, it's even more conservative when you take that into account.
Numbers in column 19 would be the numbers, that they are the difference between what our estimated payment in 16 and 18 numbers are. 18 would be and what our numbers in 20 are. So that's our shortfall.
Yes.
That's our shortfall. Where on the page before, because it was a different, we didn't scale it on these other things, we came back into the red. We came back into the black.
Yes.
After 6 years. This runs, what this says is that the 17, it's called 18 million, it's, 34,000 less than 18 million, it's called 18 million. The 18 million is, to do it as it's laid out here, would be insufficient for the duration up to 2045.
Yes.
Correct.
So the way you cure that also is, push these off, which ladders it in differently, or you raise the amount that you allocate to debt service.
Yes.
Because on the previous page, where you have the excess, that could be only capital reserve, but it could be just not like taxes. So it's not, it's interesting, it's not a great story to tell.
Right.
Okay.
It's for us to plan though.
Right.
And as I always say, each one of these projects has to stand on its own merit. So if you guys believe these projects need to be done, we're showing you how it's going to get done, and we're planning for that. If these projects you say, oh, we don't need that, or we don't need this, then there's no need to do the borrowings.
Or, when we looked at renovating north, we sat down, we looked at a number that came up initially. And we trimmed it, and we trimmed portions. We didn't do some of the features we could have done because we didn't have the money. Truthfully, it was a consensus of where to get 5, we trimmed them. So that's the other thing, that these numbers are kind of all-in numbers, not all in, but they're, we could control our spending in that too and modify our spending. Okay, it's forecasting. It gives a framework. We can adjust any of the assumptions here and then forecast it so Bob Brenner has this model in his hands.
And this is a very valued year coming up. If we do have savings through the closing of a middle school, this will be the year to plan for the rest of this so that you're not raising taxes specific for this. You can also say that's not the way I want to do it, but this is for me. I'm going to bring it to you, and it's going to be an alternative for you guys to look at.
But one of the other big variables on this page is where our interest rate's going to be, right, in the future. And, the orange column, again, that's the biggest borrowing out of all of these. So assuming that if you move forward with this next month, we're going to lock in the interest rates for that. So that will lock up one of the bigger variables of this whole puzzle.
As you see, when you look at the amount we borrowed, and then you look at the bottom, and it's 43 million that we borrowed, we're actually going to spend 73 million paying it back. So just think of the sensitivity of that, with interest rates just going down a little or going up a little. It's a huge, it's
Yeah.
sensitive to that.
Very, very, yeah.
I appreciate this, that number, too, the 73. Just want to let you know, Matt, that Zach was very clear, and everybody else, Bob was very thorough enough. I want to connect with you tomorrow or something about what you were talking about, because it was very in and out on YouTube. Done.
Yeah. So we're all aware, we are using a new microphone system. We're just, there's by a moment of explanation. Part of the reason we're trying a new microphone system is when board members are participating remotely, this means they would participate through Google, they'll come into that speaker and hear through that speaker. So the interactiveness is much more common speaker. So that the thought was, if we have to participate remotely, it'll be much more interactive than what for example, you and I suffered for back in June.
Mark, can you just say something?
Check, 1, 2.
That position is better than the way I had. Thank you.
So Bob, you should go through what you had said before. I'm just kidding.
Start over.
So,
Thank you.
so I think that kind of hits on all the high notes. Again, I think this looks at a lot of years. The timeline in the front, talk about it, if we're going to move forward, we can get started soon. Again, we got to get in line with credit rating agencies. There's a lot of deals coming to market. And we can hopefully lock in interest rates for you kind of the end of January, potentially at the earliest. So any other questions?
I would just say that I would recommend moving forward in this based on the projects. So we know what the projects are. I don't think, if we're all in agreement and we're doing these projects, I don't think waiting and not us cleaning it up right now would be, I think that would be the wrong thing to do. Interest rates move away from us and Zach thinks they're going to go different ways, we could delay it. Because it's not, we don't need the money imminently. It's not like we're out of money to pay for projects or anything like that. So I'm just saying that, but I would tell you that I think there's more risk in interest rates going up than going back down when you look at historically. So I'd just like a head nod if you'd say, tee it up.
We're gonna have a formal vote though, right?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? So you're talking about $0.3 million for the remainder of the middle school projects rights down in Rolling Hills, and then what's the other $9.5 million for? It says Rolling Hills Elementary School.
It's all together, it's 52 million we need.
Why are they separated? Because there's nothing, there's a line here that says,
The other $10 million.
And we don't need that money until next year.
Yeah,
it's still
basically,
earmarked for Rolling Hills? All of it. So the total,
No, it's all Rolling Hills and writes down, it's whatever we need it for, it's the three projects. If you look at the presentation, if you go back to the beginning of the
well, right
presentation.
here it just says, it just reads Rolling Hills addition to Meadows.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you go back to where I summarized the projects, to get to the 52.5. Move on.
That was fine.
From 14.8, 18.2, and
Yes.
19.5. That was on your agenda page. That we don't have.
Yeah, right there is where we get 52.5. And that's the 2 years. Okay?
I don't
And those are
understand that.
those are real solid numbers? We have bids and everything to,
No,
No.
okay.
no, that's part of why we're not borrowing it all at once. Is
Those are
so,
my estimates.
depending on how bids come in, you can either borrow less, or more. If you remember, we call it the cleanup issue. So for these projects specifically, you can borrow the right amount. So whereas if we borrow it all right away now, because interest rates are low, well, that's great. But what if bids are lower or higher when you get them? Then we've either borrowed too much or too little. So, we'd like to, strike the balance and try to get you the right amount.
And the borrowing is not designated to specific projects. This is just
This is
For
me showing you how to
discussion.
get the numbers.
Right.
The order resolution will be much more general than saying we're going to use specifically for this or this. It'll be more general.
It'll list these, but it'll also allow you to use it, if, you know,
Remembering you have a
it's
time,
approved somewhere else.
we have a timetable to use it for capital projects, you can't borrow for investment.
Is that 3 years?
Correct.
That word is
Yeah.
That 18 million that we have up there for us, yeah, that's including the full renovation.
So we're going to move forward with this, and depending on where we go, the January board meeting, we may come back with the parameters resolution. I wouldn't expect that that would be on the consent agenda, but the motion agenda. Zach will be back to explain what's going on, and our bond council will also be there.
So Zach, the number would probably be closer to 60 that you're going to play with as a.
In between 50 and 60, likely. Now, again, we're going to borrow exactly what you all tell us to borrow.
This is just authorizing you to.
Correct. Yeah, so if you tell us you want 42.75, even though the resolution is going to say 58 or something, we're going to borrow you exactly what it is you've authorized us to do.
Okay. Thank you, Zach.
Okay?
Thank you, Zach.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Take care.
We can go to the next slide. This slide, again, is, I'm doing this on behalf of Susan O'Grady. Believe me, she has offered several times to come in and come tonight to speak. I kind of think this is, I can handle this. She will be here on Thursday at the board meeting in her presentation, she'll get into more detail with this, but this is just more of a time-sensitive thing I'd like to have approved at the next board meeting also. Okay. Okay. She is recommending this, that we move from our current school messenger notification system, Blackboard notification system. Blackboard notification system streamlines communications, providing one-stop shopping, pushing out communications. One platform with a single sign-on. Right now, the district communications must go to multiple platforms using various usernames, passwords, not efficient. But she's really, this is what the actual platform looks like. Communicator develops messages, sends in as many as 8 different formats. Current system, School Messenger only allows communicator to send via 2 formats. Okay. The new system also comes with
I hate to jump to it. It's great to get the whole presentation. If at the end of it you go, it's $1,000 different than what we're paying now.
It's $9,300.
It's $9,300 total, and what are we paying now for the current system?
I believe, well, in future years, this is because of the turn on, which, the implementation and all that. That's why a lot of this is $9,300. Next year, the cost differential is, we can go to the next slide. This is, keep going. The cost differential in 2018-19 shows the time is on $2,022. This is $93.88 for this year, but it's got all the additional things involved in it.
I didn't mean to cut you out, but I mean, if I got to the end and it was $1,000 and it has 7 more ways of communicating, single sign-on and
Yeah.
faster communication, this was a.
Multiple.
Can you go back? Matt, I'm sorry.
Anything?
This one? This is just the timeline.
Good with it. There's no reason to.
And that's why I really want
Yeah,
to get locked in so she can start moving towards this. So.
Does she use this system in the past?
Yes, there are other,
So why someone's training for her? If she
Principals.
I think many people will be using this. I understand, and tell me if I'm wrong. Matt, do you want to talk principals?
Looks like our principals will be
Yeah.
using it for their messages, so that would
They
certainly.
use their transportation, the buses late, try to do more of that.
The system we use right now, School Messenger does all that as well. The principals use it, supervisors use it, the transportation uses it, special services department uses it. So, it provides all that as well.
And it provides and the license is a flat fee, no matter how much we use it, there's no per call or anything. Is this the same system that's gonna dial out? Or is this a different?
So this will replace the system that dials out.
Okay. So is there any per usage portion of this? So whether we could call every day if we wanted to and would do it. And the only questions I have are performance, meaning what's the time, we have 11,000 transportation, we have 12,700 some odd transportation notifications. How long does it take to clear them?
I don't
No,
know.
not you.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's, sorry, so that's the only question. I wonder how long it takes to clear. Is it comparable to what we got now? Because, if it takes an hour to clear versus 15 minutes, that's a problem for me. And the only other thing I ask is it possible, is it possible for us to also authorize representatives of our local police departments to have access to some of our distribution lists? When we have events that happen in terms of emergency notification, I accept that it's not a community. We can't do it for non-school people. But at least if it's saying what's going on from a police department, can we allow them to partner into it under the contract?
We can give whoever we want access to.
But, so if you understand what I'm going for,
I may have Susan
ask.
and talk to you, just to make sure that she understands the question.
I just have things, we could put a school on lockdown and advise families about that, but there may be something similar to that that's going on. If there was our principals sometimes send out notices, and sometimes that notice coming out from the police department because it's a possible abduction or something, I want to cut down the response time.
What does this do that school messenger does not do?
It provides 8 different ways to communicate on a single platform.
How many school messages
What are,
they were on?
I'd like to know that. What is the difference? So right now we do 2. The new one does 8.
School Messenger allows you to send an email or a phone call,
Okay.
or an SMS text message if you choose to do that as well.
All right, so then this one's going to hit Facebook, Twitter, social media things also, right?
School Messenger allows you to do that as well, we're just not utilizing it.
Okay, let's just set it related to.
The new system comes with branded messaging templates, streamlined listserv platform, and coordinated website and mobile app. Susan will discuss this in detail next week's board meeting.
Well,
Matt is, I'm sorry.
next time, have her here. That's why these meetings are here. You don't have to defend it, but the other part I'm going to ask you to do is, much like hack, I don't want to hear you do it. Every time we release something, we have to stage it because it doesn't work. So
Susan said she'd be here several times. I did that out of this to be something that I could do, and it wouldn't be more time consuming. She had a much more detailed presentation. She pared it down for me, knowing that she's going to speak about this on Thursday. So that's all my fault. Pardon me? Well,
Is
this
it
is
time
me.
sensitive
This
though?
is
You
Susan.
can take him, come to the board meeting, it will just be a regular voted item, she'll do a presentation, and that's all.
I do have a question. If you're sharing questions with her, I'm just curious about the training sessions. Do they happen, are they to be done in-house, or do we need to contract with the provider for those sessions?
I think Bob and I were sensitive to the fact that after this meeting, we have a lot to do. And so that's fine. If the board has a lot of questions, then we'll just make it a regular motion. She'll present. We'll just.
Or we go back
next month. Is it time sensitive? Yes, it is, but we'll have to do it next Thursday. Yeah. So it just won't be able to be on the consent. Why is it? I don't know. You said it was. Bob said it was.
Let's start implementing to delay it further.
Do we get different pricing if we wait another 30 days and we bring it back to the next meeting?
I'm not aware of the pricing. I know that she's got the second year pricing locked in already, I know that. This is probably a bad idea that I brought it. I can see that now.
In the future, she can dial with Google, we can do it with the remote. And we can,
It's fine too, but, if we're gonna have questions,
that's fine.
they need to be answered.
Participate.
She was very willing to do it. I did it out of
No,
my
no,
feeling.
no, it's not your fault, no big deal.
That-
Bring it to next Thursday night's meeting, if it's time sensitive, if it's not, let it go to January.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Is the
Okay,
vendor
yeah,
of the new
let's move on to the
website?
next.
Let's go, Bob,
We're done.
you're good.
One of the reasons why this has come up, I know because I use this system, is Blackboard is the vendor for the new website that's gonna,
For our existing website as well.
and for the existing, but right. So that's one advantage. And the other is, Blackboard is a really superior product.
So let's just make sure that, I assume it is, it's tied into Hack. Registrations are all transportable, people maintain their own accounts in terms of where they're gonna be contacted and what they want to be subscribed to. I imagine that's all be part of it, I hope.
So you can
We're
replace that.
gonna adjourn finance, and we're gonna move on to facilities.
Do we have to wait until 7:30?
No, we'll take a 3 to 4 minute.
Extra